Good day, everyone. I am Linette Grace G. Saguban, your grade 10 teacher, and I warmly welcome you to another edition of Linette Talks. And now we are going to have a grammar lesson, specifically targeting reflexive and intensive pronouns. In oral and written communication, there are several important points, ideas, and insights that a speaker or a writer intends to emphasize. And emphasis is made because a speaker or a writer wants to remember, convince, or persuade the listeners and the readers. This lesson about these two particular pronouns will provide some techniques to put impact on your words. I hope that everyone here is familiar with pronouns. If not, I will gladly ship you back to our English elementary teachers. Okay, just kidding. Anyway, pronouns are words that take the place of one or more nouns. Okay, one of my English teachers even put it like this. If the nouns are absent or the nouns are tired, the pronouns are there to substitute. Okay, so let's take a look at my example here. Okay, so kindly read the sentence silently. And as you can see, the bold words are the pronouns. And the words he and they are personal pronouns, the most used pronouns of all. Okay, now let's take a look at the words that are in red. What do you think those words are called? If you answered nouns, well, you are correct. But specifically, these are called antecedents. Okay, and antecedent is the word that the pronoun replaces. Actually, there are more than 10 kinds of pronouns out there. Okay, but for this lesson, we are just going to focus on two of them, respectively, the reflexive pronoun and the intensive pronoun. Let's start with reflexive pronouns. And judging by its root word, reflect, it means that they reflect the action of the verb back to our subject. Okay, and the format of this word always end with self or selves. Now let's take a look at some of the examples in the following slides. Now let's take a look at my first example. Harriet is so industrious that she makes herself lunch every day. So reflexive pronoun is used when the subject and object of the sentence are the same. So you might ask, what is a subject, ma'am? What is an object again? Okay, so the subject is the doer in a sentence, while the object is the receiver of the action. So here it's already highlighted, but our subject is Harriet. The action is our verb makes. It's underlined right here. And the words that occur after the verb makes are no other than the direct object. So here, in this case, the direct object is herself. So we are emphasizing that Harriet did not need any help. She made her lunch every day on her own. Now let's have our second example. The President of the United States finds himself as the frontrunner of the ASEAN conference. Who is our doer, or the subject of this sentence? Well, it's already highlighted, and it's no other than the President of the United States. And our verb, or the action, is the word finds. And our reflexive pronoun is no other than himself. So we are just emphasizing that the President of the United States is the only front runner. There's no other person that is running the whole ASEAN conference. Okay, and again, himself here acts as the object. And the object, himself, and the subject, they are just the same person. Now let us have our final example. We, the UNICEF delegates, are so proud of ourselves for accomplishing something noteworthy. Okay, so our subject here is no other than the UNICEF delegates. We can also choose the personal pronoun we, but for the sake of clarity, let us use the appositive. Okay. So here, our verb is the linking verb are. Okay, so it's not an action word. And of course, the appropriate reflexive pronoun to use is ourselves. Ourselves because it's plural and we refer to the many delegates. So instead of using himself or herself, we used ourselves. Okay, so let's apply the rules of pronouns that we learned in our elementary class. Let us always take into consideration the gender and the number of our antecedent. I hope that you can sense a pattern when it comes to reflexive pronoun. Okay, reflexive pronouns can always be seen right after the action verb or the linking verb. And always ask yourself, do these pronouns refer back to the subject? Are they the same people? If not, then you are using the wrong reflexive pronoun, and it's time for you to reevaluate your answer. However, let us take note of the following exemption to the rule. Some reflexive pronouns should not be used to replace personal pronouns. Okay, so as a rule, to know if you are using the right pronoun, imagine yourself saying the sentence without the person before the word and. Okay, like in this first example, the sentence is, Yolanda asked Pat and me for help. Okay, let's try to omit Pat since she is the person before the word and. So it will go like this. Yolanda asked me for help, or Yolanda asked myself for help. So what do you think is a better sentence? Obviously, it's the personal pronoun me instead of the reflexive pronoun myself. Okay, so let's try again with the second example. Yolanda and I read the book. So let us try to omit Yolanda. So which of the two sentences sound better? I read the book or myself read the book? So of course, the latter sentence sounds better. Okay, so that is a trick that you can use whenever you are going to use pronouns, not just here in our lesson, but in your everyday life as well. Now we are done with reflexive pronouns. If you have any question, feel free to park them or write them down so that you can consult me during our synchronous session. Now let us go to its twin, the intensive pronoun. Okay, so intensive pronouns has the same form as reflexive pronouns. It also ends with self or selves, depending on the number of the antecedent that it is replacing. And the easiest way to distinguish it is that if it comes right after the subject of the sentence. So unlike the reflexive pronoun earlier, which occurs right after the action verb or the linking verb, intensive pronouns usually are a little clingy to the subject. They would always occur right after the subject. But there are also times that it's not. It can come right after the indirect object of the sentence. Okay, so to demonstrate further how the intensive pronoun is used in a sentence, let us take a look at the following examples. Here is our first example. Larry himself got the highest score. Our subject is Larry, and our intensive pronoun is himself. Okay, so why did we use himself? Larry is a boy, and he is singular in number. So we used himself instead of herself or ourselves. And take note how the intensive pronoun occurs right after the subject. So they are a little bit clingy. Unlike the reflexive pronoun, which always follows the action verb or the linking verb, our intensive pronoun mostly comes after our subject. And our action here is underlined. The verb got is the action. Okay, so what do you think is being emphasized in this sentence? Okay, kindly park your answers because we're going to revisit this slide again during our synchronous session. Now let us take a look in our second example. The president herself welcomed the ASEAN delegates happily. So our subject, or the doer, is no other than the president. Okay, and in this situation, she is a woman. So instead of using himself, we used herself. Okay, and she is also singular in number. That's why we used self instead of selves. Okay, intensive pronoun mostly occurs right after our subject. Okay, like in our example here. And the action welcomed, or the verb, occurs after the intensive pronoun. Now let's have our third and final example for intensive pronouns. The sentence is, Yolanda repaired the engine herself. Okay, so you might be asking, Ma'am Linette, you told me earlier that intensive pronoun always occurs right after the subject. But I didn't say that happens all the time, right? I also mentioned that intensive pronouns can be indirect objects as well. So let us tease out the following sentence. So what is our subject? If you answered Yolanda, well, you are correct. Our verb is underlined. It's repaired. Okay, so what did she repair? The answer to that is our direct object. Okay, and the direct object in this sentence is the engine. Okay, and as a rule, the words that follow the direct object usually is the indirect object in a sentence. Okay, so here, our indirect object is the intensive pronoun herself. Okay, so we are just emphasizing that Yolanda, no one else, repaired the engine. What a superwoman, right? And that concludes our video on reflexive and intensive pronouns. I hope that you learned something new this day. And if you still have queries in your mind, you can always rewatch the whole video or consult the book. Or if you really don't understand, then don't worry, because we are still going to rediscuss this during our synchronous classes. Okay, if you have any questions, just write them down and consult them to me during our synchronous class. Okay, so I leave you with this. Okay, so remember that reflexive and intensive pronouns have the same format. Okay, they just differ on how they are used in a sentence. Okay, but it's important to keep in mind the gender and the number of the antecedent. Okay, so apply the things that you learned about personal pronouns when you were younger, because all of those basic things are still applied to more complicated theories in grammar. Okay, so with that, thank you so much for listening and watching this video, and I'll see you soon in one of our synchronous classes. Goodbye!